Good evening, everyone. The Royal Rumble 2023 is in the books, and we are here to talk about all things Royal Rumble, from the men's match to the women's match to the other three cards on the show. Welcome to our premiere edition of our Combat1 Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Lord Cephas. I'm joined by our head of the table in our family, the Earl of Florida. Earl, how are you this evening?
I am feeling after watching that, I'm ready to go pile drive somebody.
Well, hopefully you're feeling a little bit better than Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are, as the Royal Rumble just went off the air. It was a bit of a marathon of a pay-per-view, 4 hours and just under 20 minutes, but it was a lot of fun. We'll get into that here as we go. Earl, any quick thoughts going into it? Would you recommend this pay-per-view or viewing this later on the network if someone wasn't able to see it first time around?
Well, for me, it has been quite some time since I've been a purveyor of the WWE. We were talking about it earlier today. It's been probably close to 20 years since I've actually watched WWE anywhere near a consistent or even a semi-consistent basis. So for me, this was throwing me back in the deep end of the wrestling fandom, so to speak. And you know what? I love the Royal Rumble because it's almost like a reset. You get to see one of the perks of watching the Royal Rumble is you see cruiserweights rubbing elbows with heavyweights and vice versa. So it is a very, you get thrown into the deep end and you get to see who some of these characters are, some of the wrestlers, some of the abilities, and not specifically their classes, but you get to see more of them than you normally would in a normal pay per view. So if you're going to start off, you should definitely check it out and join us. Combat One is where we're diving back in and reacquainting ourselves with some old favorites.
And you know what they say? What is old is new again. And I've got to agree with you, Earl. I enjoyed the show tremendously. On the periphery of wrestling the last few years, I really got to sit and enjoy it. I didn't read any spoilers online. I just let it happen in real time and enjoy it and share it with my family. And so, without further ado, let's get into it and talk about it. The pay per view opened with the men's Royal Rumble match. And what a great way to start this card tonight. Out first was Gunther, who is the Intercontinental Champion and appears on SmackDown. And then second out was Sheamus. Good hard-hitting action at the very beginning. Up next, though, came The Miz, a bit of a wild card from Monday Night Raw. Did not last a super long time, just about 5 minutes maybe before he was eliminated.
A little surprising because of the names that I was somewhat familiar with. I had heard the Miz and I knew the Miz brand, and I was surprised he didn't last longer.
Yeah, he, like we were talking about before we came on the air, one of the last remaining older homegrown talents in WWE is The Miz. And if you look at his trajectory when he was first brought up to the main roster, he didn't get to dress in the locker room with the other wrestlers. He had to dress out in the hallway or down the hall. And to see him headline WrestleMania against John Cena when The Rock was the referee, a number of years ago, and he has been a tremendous ambassador for the brand. He's had a reality show on USA Network, Ms. and Mrs. He's just a really good representative of what the company is. So a little bit surprising that he didn't go much longer than that. Up next was Kofi Kingston, who is exclusive to SmackDown as well. And he lasted just under 15 minutes before being eliminated by Gunther. I did think it was interesting, though, when he landed on the chair, there was a spot where he lands on a chair. And I don't know if he was supposed to catch himself on the chair or not, but the chairs were slipping tonight. You notice that when Pat McAfee came out, and we'll get into Pat McAfee a little bit after we talk about this, where the chair
a few times.
Yeah, and the chair was slipping on him quite a bit.
So early on,
I know I'd hate to have him have to cut away, in a hurry, but
well, with Kofi, I was expecting some crazy little shenanigans because he's grown a reputation, I guess, over the last few years of jumping from one person on back or trying to land on the wall and jump back or doing a handstand or something like that. So I was expecting some shenanigans of one-footedness, but I think the chair KO'd him.
I see what you did there. Okay, you're just bringing it all together. Interestingly enough, a couple of stats they shared tonight. The Miz was entering his 14th Royal Rumble, Kofi Kingston in his 15th event. He lasted about 15 minutes before being eliminated by Judgment Day, made up of, in this case, Dominic Mysterio and Finn Balor. But we'll talk a little bit more about them as we go through. Johnny Gargano was out at fifth, former NXT champion. One of those guys who kind of fell through the cracks in sort of being called up, maybe sort of not being called up. And then with all the changeover in WWE, he's back. He's sort of a Triple H guy who really molded those stars in NXT. Had a really good showing, lasted almost 30 minutes in the Rumble, only his second appearance. So I thought he did a pretty good job. Out next was the second member of the New Day, Xavier Woods, who's also on SmackDown, like Kofi Kingston is. And he lasted maybe 15, or not 15, more like 11 or 12 minutes before he was eliminated by Gunther. He suffered the same fate Kofi Kingston did, pretty close to the same time. They both landed pretty much next to each other.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Xavier Woods or Johnny Gargano?
No, not specifically.
What did you message me? We were watching it. Who's the cruiserweight? I think you messaged him.
The Trunks, because he survived for quite some time. Was that one of the two that you were just naming?
Johnny Gargano. Yeah.
You know what? I was like, I love the guy. I didn't know his name, obviously. But every time somebody came in, he hopped up and he ran at him, and he got cleaned out. Like almost every single person that came in, he was the one that jumped up and gave them their big, oh, we're gonna kill somebody, and he got clocked every time. I mean, every time. I'm like, man, this guy. No, I mean, I love cruiserweights. I have a soft spot in my heart for cruiserweights from back in the days with the Kidman and Guerrero and Juventud Guerrero and Eddie Guerrero. Just all the Guerreros, the Mysterio. It was just, I have soft spot, psychosis, staying on his chair. So whenever I see one of the smaller lightweight cruiserweights in the Rumble, they're always like, yes. And but he got up every time and got cleared. His clock cleared every time. And I'm like, man, he was funny though with Sheamus. They're going after the one guy, and he looks next to him, and Sheamus is 2 foot taller than him, and he's like, after you.
Right. Well, you mentioned him being a cruiserweight. If you look at his career, and he's always tried to compete at the heavyweight level. In NXT, a lot of times he was referred to as the heart and soul. Now, for those not familiar with NXT, it's a promotional territory to kind of get wrestlers prepared for the national stage. Johnny Gargano had worked the independents for a number of years. I mean, everything from Dragon Gate USA to Evolve to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. I mean, there's a lot of different independent promotions out there that he wrestled with. But he really found his niche in NXT. I think 3 times the NXT champion and a tag champion at one point too. So he's had a lot of success, but not as much on the main roster. So it was good to see him get a good run in the Rumble tonight. Get his name out there, get some exposure, if you will. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I enjoyed him. So
out came number 7 was Karrion Kross, who is a SmackDown representative, former NXT champion, with Scarlett Bordeaux, who is his manager and also, I believe, his fiance, if I remember correctly. I really hoped for more out of him. He got eliminated after about 5 minutes by Drew McIntyre. So I was kind of disappointed that he didn't last longer, but that's because I really enjoyed him in NXT. And as soon as he won the world title, the next day he had to vacate it because of injury, right?
Yeah.
And so I really felt like he got cut short there. He gets called up to the roster. He gets beat by Jeff Hardy his first night. That's not the way you want to represent your next star, by having him lose clean in the middle of the ring their first night out. Then they put him in what appeared to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Turtles in Time outfit. That did him no favors. So they're trying to rebuild him quite a bit. So hopefully they do, but not a long showing for him. He was eliminated pretty quickly. Number 8 was Chad Gable, who is a Raw member and the head of the Alpha Academy. And he actually had a pretty nice run. He lasted about 9 minutes before the Earl's favorite wrestler, Brock Lesnar, pretty much almost severed his head from his body and eliminated him over the top. So Chad, not bad, but just kind of there as a body, as collateral damage for what they needed. Number 9 was Drew McIntyre, who had a really good run, almost 40 minutes in the Rumble. He and Sheamus, I feel like, were extremely entertaining, teaming up during the Rumble. What were your thoughts on Drew McIntyre and/or Sheamus together?
Well, my son apparently is a fan of McIntyre,
Oh,
and
interesting.
I was like, I did not know you even knew who that was. But I did watch the previous Rumble with him,
Mhm.
so it came down, I think, to McIntyre and Lesnar in that one.
Mhm.
So either way, he was a big fan and proponent of it. I'm like, oh, you've got the Irish giant leprechaun and the Scottish Braveheart
Mhm.
working together. So I did kind of like their dynamic of working together and trying to save each other from going over. The fact that they are both very large, muscular men. It was the fact that they were teamed up against some smaller individuals was it almost felt like they're the Goliaths, but
Right.
you know they they sold the bumps that they were getting. So even though they were quote unquote a higher tier, higher caliber, in the Rumble, it's a level playing field pretty much. So that's one of the things I do love about the Rumble is even though they were heavyweights, having some of the smaller ones come up and crack them, and they played the bumps off well. So I did enjoy that.
And that's one of the challenges of the Rumble you referenced earlier is you have so many different body types, so many different competitors in it. You have good guys, bad guys who are interacting and fighting who typically don't interact, at least not from a physicality standpoint. So there's a lot of improvisation on the fly, but I thought it went really, really well tonight. For those not super familiar with Drew McIntyre, he was really destined for great things in the late 2009, 2010, 2011 range. And eventually he ends up getting put in what's called three-man band, which was just difficult to watch. And then he was let go. And basically WWE told him, go prove yourself and come back. And that's what he did. He went to TNA or Impact Wrestling, was the champion there, traveled all over the world, no pun intended, making an impact. And when they brought him back, they had a bona fide star when he walked through the curtain for the very first time. He did win the WWE title following his victory at WrestleMania. The problem was it was a COVID year when he did win it, so he doesn't. That kind of gets forgotten and pushed to the side. But I'm a big fan of Drew McIntyre, so I thought a really good night. Up next was Santos Escobar, who is on SmackDown. He was Del Fantasmo from NXT. He was signed by Triple H, big star in Mexico, but I think he has talent and star written all over him, but not tonight. He lasted for a little less than 5 minutes before he also suffered the wrath of the Earl's favorite wrestler, the Beast Incarnate, Brock Lesnar. Um, Up next, Angelo Dawkins of the Street Profits, representing Monday Night Raw. And he also was caught in the crossfire of Brock Lesnar, lasting a little less than 4 minutes. Um, Anything you want to say about Escobar or Angelo Dawkins or Chad Gable, or as we call just another victim to Brock Lesnar?
No, after Brock had his way with him, it was just I was sitting there just shaking my head going, I'm not a big fan of Brock Lesnar, in case y'all didn't know. Um, I
Oh,
mean,
we're about to get to that. Go ahead.
he's a giant beast, but either way, it was amusing. I was sitting here with my children, a few of them who were watching it, and they're like, there's getting too many people to the ring, and I was like, don't worry, they're about to send in somebody who's going to be big heavyweight, who's going to toss a few people out. That's what
Right.
we do. What's to be expected. And then I heard the music, and I was like, oh yeah, here comes Necroman.
Well, and it's interesting. We'll talk about when we get towards the end of this. The women's world were actually at the end in the final segment, if you will. They had 11 wrestlers in the ring, which was kind of surprising when they made that announcement on commentary. I'm like, oh, here we go. Here come the eliminations, right? But Brock Lesnar came out and eliminated 3 individuals. And then he, in turn, and I actually found this super shocking, Brock Lesnar was only in there for about 3.5 minutes before he was eliminated by the almighty Bobby Lashley, which was a huge moment, I think, for Lashley to have that opportunity to eliminate Brock Lesnar. But Bobby Lashley didn't last super long, as he was the next one out from Monday Night Raw, as he was eliminated by Seth freaking Rollins. Just about 8 minutes of ring time. So pretty surprising there. We saw Brock Lesnar tear up the ringside area, scare Pat McAfee and Michael Cole. Michael Cole ran, actually. Choked a poor referee and threw him over the barrier. That was pretty rough. But it made sense. That's very much in line with Brock Lesnar's character, and I think probably Brock Lesnar the person. So pretty entertaining stuff with that. Again, I'm a big Bobby Lashley guy. I wish he'd had more time. I really enjoyed his work when he was in Impact Wrestling. He was their world champion, and actually could cut a promo when given a chance, even though he's a little bit more soft-spoken. I thought he was very effective and had some really good matches. Since coming back to WWE, he was with the Hurt Locker, with MVP, with Shelton Benjamin. Some varying success to certain degrees, but I think there's more for him. Just didn't get a chance to show it very much tonight again, other than eliminating Brock Lesnar. Up next was Baron Corbin. What can we say about Baron Corbin? Well, his timing is not very good, because he walked into a buzzsaw known as Brock Lesnar as he was walking up to the ring area. Earl, you want to take it from there?
He didn't even make it into the ring. I'm like, oh, there he goes.
Yeah.
Still outside the ring, upset, and he walked right into the path of Mr. Lesnar, and you know what? He was never the same after that.
If you walk into a tornado, it's going to do some damage, and he walked into an F5, and yes, I tied that in pretty nicely. Lesnar hit the F5 on him on the floor, and that was pretty much it. He would eventually be thrown into the ring, and then pretty summarily eliminated by the next guy who would come out at number 15, who was Seth freaking Rollins, who eliminated Baron Corbin in about less than 10 seconds. So it wasn't a record breaker, but it was certainly on the on the lower end.
He was bushwhacked.
All right, so bushwhack was 3 seconds. That is still not the record, because eventually that record would be broken by Santino Marella with a 1 second appearance in the Rumble, which is certainly in line with his character, claiming he wasn't ready, right? The minute he stepped in the ring, he got clotheslined, and that was that. So Baron Corbin, well, you know what? I'd say he had an easy night off, but he did not, as he got mangled at ringside.
Yeah, and then Lesnar also shared the ringside steps with the announcers table, and
so it was not a good night to be at ringside. The announce table took a beating most of the night in several different matches.
Yeah.
So maybe a little hazard pay for the announcers tonight for Corey Graves and Michael Cole and Pat McAfee. All right, up next was Otis of the Alpha Academy. A little bit bigger fella. It just didn't work. He was only out there for just a couple of minutes. I guess it was okay. It was sort of filler.
But his presence was felt by several of the wrestlers in the ring.
And remember, it's not the worm, it's the caterpillar.
I was terrified. If that was coming at me, I would have eliminated myself.
I can only quote Lady Cephas, who watched the entire program with us tonight, as well, as she said, quote, "Oh my Lord." That's all she could say to that. And so, I mean, really, what else is there to say? Oh my Lord, I think covers it.
All you can do is thank the Scottish Claymore and the Irish Leprechaun for taking care of voters for us.
By the way, why don't you go tell Sheamus he's an Irish Leprechaun, and let's see how that goes for you, fella.
I'm sure there'll be a line. he can get in line right after Brock Lesnar, who's not going to be thrilled with me besmirching his name. So comes when that line comes to my door, the Earl of Florida will advocate his throne because he will be in traction.
Because, yeah, he'd get beat with your own throne's probably how that would go. So Otis lasted like 3 minutes until, as the Earl said, the tandem of Drew McIntyre and Sheamus eliminated young Otis.
And then it leads us to the interesting number 17.
Yes, it's a mystery, isn't it, boys and girls?
I mean, we know it's supposed to be.
It was supposed to be Rey Mysterio. The graphic hit, the music hit, the crowd exploded, and then he never showed.
And then it was like an emptiness.
Well, if I were to channel Bobby the Brain Heenan, who is for me the greatest color commentator of all time, he would probably refer to Rey Mysterio as just being a coward and being afraid to come out. That would have been something Bobby Heenan would have said.
He probably would have said
back in the day.
Son, he was afraid his son was going to throw him out. You know,
exactly. Or he'd say he was in the locker room going through 17 other people's bags or whatever, something like that, because that
or something.
Yeah,
probably was brain.
And I don't know if he's right or wrong. I mean, I can't speak for people's behavior and personalities, but he didn't show, so I'm going to guess he was eliminated by not making it to the ring in the 90 seconds that they were putting in intervals.
Part of him showed.
Oh, really? We'll take it from here. Tell us about this part.
Number 18 would be his offspring coming to the ring with what could only be assumed would be his father's mask.
Yep.
That rumor has it, according to the commentators, because I have no idea, I'm still relatively new to this, his father said that he would never give him the mask until he proved and earned it. And
looks like he earned it to me.
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe he earned it in the back locker room, but we're not entirely sure how he got a hold of the mask or what the circumstances are to the missing in action Rey Mysterio.
So I think it was Pat McAfee that said that he was the worst child in the history of having children. I don't know why, but that made me laugh. I know what he was trying to get at. It just didn't work, but yet it still worked because I'm like, dude, I totally get what he's talking about. He actually had a really good showing. I mean, he got beat from pillar to post. But go ahead.
It felt like watching a Lucha Libre version of Ric Flair. I have to be honest, I had Flair vibes.
Interesting. Go ahead. I was thinking the chicken, heel as well, right? Always begging off, always then hitting somebody from behind. I see exactly what you're saying there. I was thoroughly entertained by him.
I was too. I mean, initially I'm like, I don't like this guy because I had seen him in the previous Rumble. And I'm like, man, he doesn't impress me. But what the year difference between the previous Rumble and this Rumble, and I'm like, you know what? I think he's kind of leaned into some of his strengths, and he played up the heel card very well several times during. I felt Flair vibes. I mean, he did that well several times. So. That's props if you know who I'm speaking of, Ric Flair, Nature Boy, who proved, the great way to, let's not fight, turn around and he's telling the ref he's not doing anything, and then he mule kicks backwards and the guy drops. I don't know what happened.
It happens. Thumb to the eyes. It happens.
Yeah.
Low blow. It happens.
Yeah, it wasn't my fault. The referee couldn't see it. Exactly. But no, I did get some definite Flairish vibes from the kids. So those are that's high marks in my opinion.
That's pretty tall praise for a young wrestler to get that. And he lasted, it says here, about 25 minutes. And I thought it was a really good run. I thought he did very well, performed well, and advanced himself quite a bit, I would say, in the eyes of the fans. Certainly in my eyes. He would eventually be eliminated though by Cody Rhodes.
But he could compete with the time and the show that Elias put in.
Yeah, so Elias, maybe his brother. No, it was Elias tonight. We all want to walk with Elias, or that's what he used to say coming to the ring. He very much Jeff Jarretted tonight as he came out with his guitar, slid it into the ring as he was getting in the ring, and actually used it. But it did not result in elimination for him.
No.
But unfortunately for Elias, he got to be eliminated again by Sheamus and by Drew McIntyre, and he didn't even make it a minute in the Rumble. Sucks to be Elias tonight.
Yeah.
So an early night, an early shower for the musical star and Raw talent. You want to take number 20?
As my son nicknamed him, he was the Winter Soldier tonight because he had a metallic sleeve on his arm. His name is Prince.
Yeah.
Is that
So,
the same one?
well, in Japan and on the independent circuit, he was Prince Devitt. When he went to NXT, he became Finn Balor and had a really great run in NXT. A couple of times the champion. Wrestled a lot of intergender matches with Bayley as his tag team partner on the house show loop. Also is the Demon at times, which is a totally different character that he wears complete body makeup and paint, has the tassels and all. Different story. He wasn't the Demon tonight. Right now, he's part of a group called Judgment Day, which is Damian Priest himself, Rhea Ripley, talk about her in the Women's Rumble, and Dominic Mysterio. So I thought he had a really good showing. He wasn't in there super long, but Judgment Day had a nice little run there for the time that he was in there.
And he was impressive. I mean, again, I point out I like the smaller build wrestlers because they're faster, they're more energetic, and I love the high flying and the risks that they take. And he didn't disappoint. He was in there, and the comedy that they do as well, especially when they come up against the larger framed wrestlers, they have comedic gold. I mean, hands down, comedic gold. And he worked at him with Dominic when they would face off against McIntyre and Sheamus, and they're like, "Hey, no."
Right, exactly. Hey, no, we're friends here. No, we're really not. And the beating commenced. Right, he starts swinging on Sheamus, I believe it was, as Mysterio is trying to shake the hand of McIntyre, as the other two are fighting. Like, yeah, he's not going to buy that, probably. The whole hand behind your back, hand out kind of deal.
Mysterio hit the ground, was like that, and McIntyre was like, "No, get up before I beat you. You have to be in a standing position." But yeah, I enjoyed them. I enjoyed the Judgment Day very much.
So I'm going to take number 21 if you don't mind, and I just have one question for you. Can you dig it, sucker? That's right. The Hall of Famer himself, Booker T, made an appearance in the 2023 Royal Rumble in his home state of Texas, coming out to a thunderous ovation. The crowd was extremely happy to see him in the ring. He did his usual moves, the sidekick, and then what everybody really came to see, I think we can all agree, was the spinner Rooney.
I was worried. I even told my kids, I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm kind of scared. I hope he can do it.
Well, he did it, and it looked pretty good. Unfortunately, I think he may have suffered some level of dizziness when he did it, because immediately after doing so, he was eliminated by Gunther. So he was in the Rumble for all of 45 seconds, having done the hour pre-show, which I did watch as well. So a long night for Booker. And the crowd, you could tell, very, very disappointed that he was eliminated so quickly. But they try to have a legend every year, and I think he was absolutely the right choice. Did nothing to embarrass himself. And that's always the fear when they bring back legends, is hopefully nothing happens or they don't get injured in some way or somehow. I enjoyed the cameo. I thought it was really, really good.
It was nice.
So with number 22, that falls in line with your Judgment Day group that you were so fond of tonight. Go ahead and take it.
Damian Priest comes in, and I have not seen him yet. He is a larger frame than the rest of Judgment Day, but he is equally as fast and energetic. So it was fun seeing a different dynamic to Judgment Day. He came in and just jumped in, and obviously the team and everything. So again, this was my first interaction watching him, and I was pleasantly surprised by his spunk. I guess I would be nice with putting it, because you can't really see when you watch the Rumble. you have to understand it's not like a regular match. You're not going to have a lot of technical, and you can't do a whole lot of high flying moves, and you can't do a lot of things because the more people in there, the bigger risks are going to get hurt. So what you have is a lot of brawling and chops, and
Mhm.
obviously when a new person comes in, you will get a few of their signature moves, but it's a different animal than a typical match. So it's hard to gauge where they fall in skill level as a wrestler versus with a rumble. You can see how their stamina is and their energy and their interaction with the crowd and their ability to ad lib at the moment, because the rumble you can't plan everything out like you potentially can for a shorter match.
Mhm.
It's the ad lib, you have to work and give and take with the other people. So when you see somebody who's giving bumps and taking bumps and working with the crowd and working with uh, different members, that gives you an idea of what kind of worker this person is, and then you can find out later on his technical abilities. But Damian Priest was impressive for what I saw of him. What do you think?
So honestly, I like the Judgment Day grouping. I really, really do. I had seen Damian Priest in NXT years ago. I know he'd had some injury issues and problems, but I think putting them together in this group has really worked for him. It's sort of reinvigorated Finn Balor, and it's got to help Dominic Mysterio. I mean, working with his father obviously helpful, but being with somebody like Finn Balor who had years and years and years of experience, realistically can be a huge benefit to him. I enjoyed what I saw. He wasn't in there long, only a couple of minutes,
Yeah,
but still, it was enough. Out next was the other half of the Street Profits, Montez Ford, who is actually married to Bianca Belair.
okay,
Really, not a lot to talk about. He wasn't out there very long because he ran into Damian Priest, and Damian Priest launched him
yeah.
over the top rope. I was like, dang, that is some raw power right
But
there.
on his feet,
I
he
know.
with the ropes and dropped, but the man landed on his feet.
He landed on his feet. If I remember right, he sort of kind of backed into the rail, or
Yep.
it's not a guardrail, but the rail separator where the fans are,
Yeah.
which would come into play later in the Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns match. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So not a lot to say. The Street Profits had a good run as the Raw Tag Team Champions. They've kind of been shuffled back lower in the card. So, and WWE does this like all wrestling promotions do. You can only be at the top so long. And then there's only one way to go, and that's back down the card. And
Yeah.
so they're kind of toiling towards the bottom. And so I'm sure they'll be elevated again at a certain point. It just wasn't for tonight. But we needed bodies and no hits, no issues there. I did like that he and Angelo Dawkins both wore San Antonio Spur like colors,
Yeah.
the black and the silver. That was cool. I always like it when people go for the cheap hometown pop because I do the exact same thing.
Yep.
Out next, there was another question. That is, you think you know me?
And I think
And
we
And I think we do. Edge made his triumphant return to WWE. He had not been seen since October when he was injured, and so was his wife, Beth Phoenix, with a concerto. And those longtime fans know that that's something that he and Christian started back in the day, and he and his wife fell victim to it. And so we haven't seen him for a while. And so when the music hit and he come out, two things come to mind, and I'll hand it over to you. One, the years look on him, but dang, I wish I look as good at his age as he does.
yeah. For those of you who are new to wrestling or were first to wrestling, and you watch him, you go, "Man, he looks familiar." Yes, he was in Highlander. No,
No,
we're not talking more about that. We're gonna move
probably
on.
not. No,
If you watched Haven on the Sci-Fi Channel,
no,
you would recognize him. Or he was also on the latter, I think, two of the final seasons of Vikings,
right.
where he was a Viking on there. So he has had a career outside of wrestling, but he is making a triumphant return. And let's just say one word to define what he did in there, and let's just call it the spear.
This, which really not his original move, but he sort of adopted it and used it to great effect. Especially when he was in his singles runs, that was really huge for him.
Tag team, it became a big
Yeah,
proponent of aggressive offensive actions.
And it was very timely that he arrived because he eliminated Damian Priest and he eliminated Finn Balor. So he got his measure of revenge, only to be jumped at ringside, only to fight back up the walkway.
Yep.
So it was pretty interesting.
And another legend came out, and I'll let you explain what happened there.
So we mentioned just a couple of minutes ago that October was last time we saw Edge because he was injured and his wife Beth Phoenix was injured. The Glamazon, a Hall of Famer in WWE, a women's champion in the mid 2000s, she came out to defend her husband as they got very much near the entranceway up that extremely long walk. Right, all I could think of when I was watching was, man, if the Ultimate Warrior had to run that, he'd needed oxygen by the time he got to the ring. Anybody knows Ultimate Warrior knows he ran 1,000 miles an hour, right? But yeah, she came out there and actually speared Rhea Ripley, who was out there attacking Edge as well as part of the Judgment Day. So, and that will play into the Rumble talk here in just a little bit. But a really good segment there to keep that feud going. I thought it was perfect. You got some bodies out of the ring. Very, very quickly.
And the next person to join the Rumble actually came out during the actions that we were just describing. And if I was him, I would have done the same exact thing. I ain't getting in the middle of this. I'm not even walking through that. I'm just going to stay back here.
Right. What did we learn from Baron Corbin? Stay the heck away.
Let them fight, and we'll stay over here.
Let the Wookiee win. I think we've learned that. One thing I will point out, though, Edge was eliminated by Judgment Day by Finn Balor and Damian Priest. And my oldest was sitting beside me, was like, "Are they allowed to do that?" I'm like, all's fair in Love War and the Rumble. So yes, you can be pulled out by a competitor who's already been eliminated. I didn't say you should.
Yeah,
I'm just saying it can happen.
it can happen.
And in this case, it did. But yeah, you're right. Austin Theory definitely showing some maturity finally. Like, nope, I want no part of this. Thank you, but no. He's the United States champion. Didn't have a tremendous amount of time in the ring because he was number 25, so it was more towards the end.
Yeah.
But he had an okay showing. Nothing to embarrass oneself. He got some exposure.
Yeah.
Up at number 26 was Omos, who was the former tag team partner of the phenomenal AJ Styles. He would go on to be eliminated by Braun Strowman, the monster among men. And all I can say about his appearance in the Rumble was, well, he was there. At 7'4", I would like to have seen them maybe feature him a little bit more. But he just was sort of cannon foddered for Braun Strowman, who we already know is ripped and over with people. I think Omos could have used a little bit, maybe an elimination or two, or a little bit longer time. But the other thing I thought about is, you might want to show sparingly because not everybody is Ricky Steamboat or Ric Flair in the ring. That's not who they are. So.
Yeah, I know when I was watching it and he came out, I was like, "Oh Lord, this guy's massive." Then the next guy come out was the Monster,
right.
And okay, he came over the top ropes too, but he's probably 5 inches shorter than than his opponent at the moment. So I was honestly, what I was expecting was for them to both go over simultaneously, and then to tear everything else that wasn't torn up by Brock earlier, as they just fought through, and that's kind of what I was expecting. So when one went out and the other one stayed in the ring, I was like, I think there's a missed opportunity because obviously you have to get him out of the ring too in order to continue. So I probably would have had the two giants go out together and then just destroy everything and get carved off and separated and that sort of thing, just to build if that was the direction they're going. So obviously we had two different ideas there.
Yeah, it worked for what it was. Yeah. Out next would be Ricochet, who has sort of had an up and down career on the main roster. Yo-yoed, successful one week and then losing a couple of matches in a row. So kind of been yo-yoed back and forth. He was in NXT for a short period of time. If you see him and go, hey, I kind of recognize that guy. He was on Lucha Underground as Prince Puma back in the day. They had 4 seasons on I believe it was the El Rey Network is what that aired on. So I think it's on Netflix. You can go back and watch it. I actually thought it was really good wrestling. I knew him from there, but not a whole lot tonight, except for one spot, which we'll get to next with number 29. Everybody's favorite, Logan Paul at number 29 comes into the Rumble. And Earl, I don't know how well you were watching him, but his chest was red real quick.
Oh Lord. Shane is a very white man. But, when you do the sort of thing a lot, your body starts to get used to it.
Right.
You can never get used to it on a certain level, but you get used to getting chopped and stuff like that. For a layman to come in who doesn't get slapped on a regular basis
Right.
on the pectorals, his chest was extremely. I'm like, man, did they paint him? Did he blade? Because he was very, very strawberry colored on his chest from those chops.
He absolutely was. Yeah.
My son was like, yeah. And I was like, you can leave the room now. I wasn't sure which we were going to get, if we were going to get a quick knockout or if we were going to see some of his physical capabilities. And I have to say, I wasn't completely surprised, but I was still pleasantly surprised at some of his ability in the ring. I mean, I knew he was an athlete, but a certain athlete caliber of physicality. But I was still pleasantly surprised at what he was able to bring. Go ahead.
Well, no, he had a match at Crown Jewel against Roman Reigns, and Roman Reigns obviously emerged the winner because he was the reigning defending champion tonight.
Yeah.
But in that Crown Jewel match, he shocked everybody with how good he really was. Actually suffered an injury in that and still worked the match. So my hat's off to him for that. Him being in the Rumble, I thought was really cool. I'm not going to lie. He is a natural heel. He understands wrestling. He gets it. And he knew how to rile that crowd up, and he did it. But there was one spot, and that is the double top rope jump with him on the left side, Ricochet on the right, where they met in the middle of the ring with a double clothesline or double crossbody, however that actually turned out to be. Literally a double clothesline.
I'm not sure that in the middle of the ring. I think he might have went a little bit further than Ricochet. Well, I mean, you're going to credit that to the fact that he's twice the height of Ricochet, perhaps. But I mean,
maybe. But what a move! What a series there.
Yeah, that was impressive.
And people go away talking about that. So next time Logan Paul comes back, I would expect him to be involved with WrestleMania because if you're going Hollywood, why not?
I think they led up to that with because I was watching it, and next thing I know, I don't see him in the ring, and they were saying, "Oh, the last 4 in the ring," and I'm like, "What happened to Logan Paul? Did I miss that?"
Oh no, we were having that same discussion. Watching, I'm like, he's hiding on the floor because he's smart. He's in the Jerry Lawler school, right? He's like, stay on the floor or bounce on one foot, whatever you got to do, right? The last entrant in the Rumble was the one that, as the Earl and I were messaging back and forth this evening during the match, I thought, I think Cody's going to win with all the hype he got during the pregame and that video and the return, which, by the way, really well done. WWE always does a wonderful job with those. Kind of felt like as the star power started to dwindle some, I'm like, well, we're looking at Seth Rollins or we're looking at Cody Rhodes. I don't see it going to anybody else. Unfortunately for Seth Rollins, he kind of got thrown out by Logan Paul, which was tremendous.
Which I think might lead us to the to what you were talking about. Logan Paul might return for a WrestleMania match. I think that might be what it will be.
Oh, I think they could have a great match with what I've seen from them so far.
Yep. So I mean, a little bit of revenge. You threw me out in the Rumble, and I think it could be an entertaining bout.
And ultimately, it comes down to Gunther, who began number 1, who actually broke the record this year for most time in the Rumble. Was it an hour, 11 minutes? I think it's 40. 2 seconds, something like that. That is an all-time record in any Royal Rumble, men or women. So congratulations on Gunther for that, going wire to wire. But in the end, the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, eliminates Gunther and moves on, heading to WrestleMania Challenge for one of the championships that may or may not be held by Roman Reigns. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. Overall, Earl, what are your thoughts on that Rumble match?
I enjoyed it. Again, it was a reacquainting of me to the Rumble, to WWE in general, and so I enjoyed the process and all the way through. At the very end, I have to say that I knew obviously who Cody Rhodes is. I knew his father, his brother, the heritage, and somewhat of his career, but Gunther at the end. I was like, who is this dude? Is he important? Because I almost believe that he could win it too.
Mm-hmm.
He survived the entire Rumble, took some pretty nasty hits, delivered some nasty hits. And at the end, him and Rhodes going back and forth, I felt like I had already watched the Rumble and I was watching a championship match because they were both giving it all. And you could tell Gunther was exhausted, but he wasn't giving it up. But Rhodes was willing to take some hits to give him breathing room, and it was back and forth. So, I mean, I was like, I'm not sure who this Gunther character is, but he could potentially win the way they're going back and forth. So, I mean, that right there shows you the level of commitment and athleticism and teamwork that they do because it was very impressive. That their final bout, where I just wasn't sure, was it going to be Rhodes or was it going to be Gunther? And I'm like, who the heck is Gunther? Or should I be worried that he's going to win?
Well, a little on Gunther. So NXT had certain divisions. You had the main NXT in Orlando, obviously, but you have NXT UK, and that's where he's from, where he had a tremendous run there. And then also as a part of Imperium, which is Fabian Eichner, and I can't remember the other guy, but they came out with him to flank him when he first came out in the Rumble. But I agree with you. Great performance. That's a lot of stamina, and that's a long time to be out there. If 62 minutes, which was Rey Mysterio record, right, that they kept touting by the numbers, to be out there an hour and 11 minutes, that's more than 10 minutes longer than anybody else, in this case, Rey Mysterio. So good on him. Great performance. And I feel like that just elevated him because now you're not just a heavy guy who's looking to land a big move and that's it. No, he has stamina and he can have some longer matches. And I don't really consider myself a purist wrestling fan because what does that really mean, right? It's a worked sport. So what is purism? But I really enjoyed it. I'm like, I need to see more of that guy down the road. And hopefully he gets an opportunity to shine.
He reminded me a bit of Regal in the fact, Lord Regal.
Sure.
In the fact that his character was, earlier Regal, not the later on suit tie and everything, and the fact that he has the skills, but and he was solid. Where if I recall, Regal was kind of like a mid-level where he could fight some of the heavyweights and potentially win or lose, but he was like Intercontinental Champion area. And I was getting those kind of vibes from Gunther that he was solid. He could conceivably step it up.
Mm-hmm.
He has the kind of a heel feel vibe to him that could potentially be more. So yeah, I definitely felt what you're feeling.
So last thing on this, then we'll move on. Interesting. The two wrestlers had the most eliminations, Gunther and Cody Rhodes. Each had 5 eliminations. So interesting symmetry, how that worked out in the men's rumble. All right. Up next, we had something we hadn't seen before, and that was a Mountain Dew pitch black match. And if you didn't see it, you really need to go back and watch it because it was visually very, 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 very interesting. I enjoyed it. You had LA Knight, who is the former Eli Drake from Impact Wrestling, and some of the independents. He was in the NWA, the NWA Revival Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. So he's not a new person, but he goes by LA Knight in WWE. He had a match with Bray Wyatt. And it was different. They turned the lights down. They had ring ropes that were illuminated. They had green powder everywhere on the announcer's table. Very strange.
Yeah.
The
Little
the
balls.
the choice in colors of the outfits and the facial paint that Bray Wyatt had and the contacts,
Yeah.
everything looked visually stunning. It was really a by the book anything goes match. It
Yeah.
didn't last super long. It actually went less than 10 minutes. And honestly, I'm not sure the crowd knew what to do with it. I didn't hear a lot of reaction, but I think it was more because it was a spectacle than
Yeah.
anything else. Ultimately, Bray Wyatt would get a clean pinfall victory over LA Knight when he hit Sister Abigail, got a clean 1, 2, 3 count. What was your take on the very first Mountain Dew pitch black match?
Well, again, newbie, starting over, so I wasn't familiar with either one of these characters. But what I was getting from not LA dude, LA
Mm-hmm.
Knight,
Mm-hmm.
but the guy,
Yeah.
I was getting some massive like mankind vibes, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and slash not exactly Undertaker, but I mean a lot of mankind like that they're trying to do a variant or a resurgence. I mean, they even broke out with a mandible claw
Mm-hmm.
uh, at later in the match. But then the different during the match and right after it almost like he shifted from one personality, and then when they shifted the black light on, he became another personality, and
Right.
then after the match later on, he became a third personality. So I felt very much like Mick Foley. Are you around for this?
I mean, you bring up an interesting point, the three faces of Foley. That's
Not,
very, yeah.
but also with the pre warm up right before it when it would show him doing like a Mr. Rogers variant or whatever it was.
Right.
I was like, man, if I was watching a mankind thing and saw, Cactus Jack or Dude Love or it's like it felt very, very much like it was I knew the next generation of mankind.
Right. I agree. And then they competed even after the match was over, eventually ending up on one of the sound stages
Yep.
where Uncle Howdy leapt off a very top structure to elbow LA Knight through the floor with a really interesting pyrotechnic result. If you look real close when he jumped, LA Knight tried to slide a little bit to get under because he overshot him a little bit.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: I would never criticize anyone because my big self could not climb up there and try that anyway. So good on them. The camera angle, the last camera angle they shot covered it very very well.
Yeah.
The live shot and the first replay, but you can deal with that in post production. So I thought it was a good match. Then you had the women's championship, the Raw Women's Championship. You had Bianca Belair defending against one of my personal favorites, Little Miss Bliss, 5 feet of fury, Alexa Bliss. And I thought it was a pretty good match. It didn't go a super long time, a little less than 10 minutes. Bianca Belair pinned Alexa Bliss clean in the middle of the ring. Now, Earl, this is your first time getting to see these two ladies compete. What did you think?
Uh, I was. I mean, they were athletic, able to go on back and forth. I wasn't entirely sure what was going on with that hair. I was like, is that whip allowed? I mean, would that be something
Apparently so, yes.
like, I felt like she was going with Indiana Jones one moment, then she was like Catwoman the next. I'm like, so technically it's part of her body, so it's not a weapon. Okay.
Technically, yep.
And so again, they added a little bit of the Uncle Howdy Doody, whatever he was. There's some kind of thing going on there that I wasn't fully aware of. Just maybe it's a stalker thing. I don't know.
Well, she's
All,
sort of been affiliated with Bray Wyatt previously, kind of acting like maybe she was Sister Abigail, as part of the Wyatt family.
I was
Um,
curious about that because I'm like, I knew
yeah,
that his finisher, then her finisher, and I was like, was there a connection? And then Uncle Howdy Doody. Uh, I don't know. I keep calling him Howdy Doody, but
right.
So I'm like, there's something going on there, whether she's going to join or not. I'm like, it's interesting.
Or have some relapse where she becomes that personality, something like that. To go back one match, the Bray Wyatt LA Knight black pitch match. You'll notice Uncle Howdy jumped off that structure.
Yeah.
As Bray Wyatt's looking down on what just happened, if you look at the very top, did you see the rabbit with the funky ears? And there was, so there'll be more to come following that. Just very weird, but I couldn't stop watching it. I was entertained. Up next comes the Women's Royal Rumble, and I actually believe it held its own absolutely against the men's. Very entertaining. There was some cannon fodder going on that always happens in a battle royal or a Royal Rumble. Rhea Ripley starts the match at number 1, and Liv Morgan comes in at number 2, and they actually are the last two superstars in the match. So we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Dana Brooke came into the ring. She's from Raw, and she did okay, but she ran into a buzzsaw named Bailey, Dakota Kai, and Io Sky, Damage Control, and they caused a lot of damage in this match. It was the night for 3-person teams to be successful in the Rumble, and it makes perfect sense logically that a 3-person team would dominate single competitors. So Dana was there. Number 4 was Emma, who was competing in her very first Royal Rumble. As the announcer said, she was released from her contract just a few weeks before the first Women's Royal Rumble took place. So this was her first opportunity to do it. I didn't think she was super distinguishing. Any thoughts on Dana Brooke or Emma as far as competitors in the Rumble tonight?
No, there were some that stood out in the women's Rumble, and then there were some that, as you called them, were cannon fodder. They have them in the men's Rumble as well. So it's not that we're being biased one or the other. They're just some that they come in and it's their gimmick to get destroyed and or tossed out. Or yeah, good.
No, I was just say I'll give you someone who was not cannon fodder, and that was Shayna Baszler, who legitimately scares me every time because I believe she not only could she hurt me, she would hurt me, and have that smile about it too. And I'm like, nope, not today, not today,
not today, Shane.
But she also fell victim to Damage Control. She was eliminated as well by those 3 individuals. At number 6 came out my personal favorite, Bailey comes out. Longtime NXT fan of her, grew up with her. I went to the Barclays Center in Brooklyn to see the first big NXT show held outside of Florida. She was on the card. She won the NXT Women's title that night. So that's how much I loved NXT back in the day. She had a really good night. She really, really did. Had 5 eliminations. She didn't win, obviously, but a really good showing for her. And honestly, she manages most of the time now. She has been injured, so she's kind of transitioned a little bit. I expect to see her come back as a wrestler full time eventually. Right now, she's managing Io Sky and Dakota Kai. So they're the tag team champions. So good job there. I enjoyed her performance. Liv Morgan finally was able to get rid of Bailey about midway through the Rumble. Up next, number 7 was B-Fab, who continues to be fabulous according to Pat McAfee. Just kind of there for about half a minute, and out she went. Rhea Ripley unceremoniously dumped her from the ring. Cool look though. I really like the silverish white dress. I really like that look, but unfortunately, it didn't help. Number 8 was the NXT champion, Rosanna Perez, and she had a pretty good showing, I think. She's a little on the smaller side, but she really was a house of fire. The announcers weren't trying to oversell it. She really was constant motion and energy, which you really need that in the Rumble because it can bog down, especially about halfway through. I never felt like the Women's Rumble dragged at all. I thought it was constantly progressing somewhere, but She also fell victim to damage control on the night. Uh, Unfortunately, Dakota Kai would come out next, and Io Sky. It was good for a while it lasted.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about what happened to them in just a little bit. Natty came out from SmackDown, who has a beef um, about having her nose broken, and she was summarily dumped by Damage Control. So she did not really get her measure of revenge.
Yeah.
Number 12 was Candice LeRae, who is Johnny Gargano's real life wife. And Corey Graves had the greatest line of the entire night, that if Candice LeRae did what Johnny Wrestling couldn't do and won, that Johnny could stay home with the baby. I thought that was fantastic. Corey sometimes is hit or miss, but he was hitting on all cylinders tonight. She also fell victim to damage control, specifically Io Sky. She got knocked off the top rope, is what happened, and tumbled to the floor. Number 13 is Zoe Stark from NXT. She lasted for a while, kind of just a body in there. Didn't do anything outstanding, but she did have a pretty good run. Number 14 is Xia Li, who's from SmackDown, who the storyline is disappointed that all these other people are getting title shots and things ahead of her. Well, I think, again, Corey Graves was right. We'll do something about it. And then you get those opportunities as well. She didn't last super long either, so I guess she didn't get what she was looking for. Number 15, the man, Becky Lynch, came out and immediately started eliminating damage control. She eliminated Dakota Kai, Io Sky, and Bayley were eliminated by her. So that was fairly interesting. The interesting thing I would say is that she was eliminated. Excuse me, she was eliminated by Bayley, is what I should have said. So it was kind of shocking that Becky Lynch only had a few minutes in the Rumble, but it was a quality few minutes.
Yeah.
And then the fight continued, right? Even after the fact. So the storyline continues. I thought that was entertaining. Tegan Nox from SmackDown came out as well. Had an okay performance. She would be eliminated by Asuka a little bit later, who would come out at number 17. Asuka had a really good run, I thought. And by the way, with the face paint and legitimately,
Muda
yes,
vibes.
Well, a little bit later, who was it that came out that does the Shining Wizard? I think that is Tegan Nox that does the Shining Wizard, and they were talking about the shiniest wizard, right? I don't know if you heard them talking about that. And Corey Graves said, I think Muto would have something to say about it. Talking about KG Muto, who is the great Muta, who is the Shining Wizard. I thought that was a nice little call to him because he's wrestling his last match here in a couple of weeks in Japan, and I actually did one 2 weeks ago with Sting and Darby Allin in a 6-man tag team match, which is kind of cool to see Sting and Muta team up. But that's what he was referencing there, if anybody was listening to that. After Asuka came Piper Niven, and my goodness, she was very challenging for the women to work with, but she is really good. She is light on her feet, I think, for someone who carries her build. I thought she was super entertaining personally. How about you?
Yeah, she also had the intimidating factor where a lot of the women have similar builds and physiques. There are a few that, obviously the number one who has a bigger frame, a larger frame than some of the other women, who is obviously would be one of the more intimidating women in the Rumble. But so yeah, she came in with her build. It marked her as a threat, definitely a higher threat index than some of the others.
And I think you said it earlier and did it really well. It's the visual.
Yeah.
Different athletes, different sizes, different shapes. That's what makes the Rumble one of our favorite events in years past, is that it's not a one-on-one match where you have, so let's say, a 300-pound guy against a 199-pound guy, where you're like, well, realistically, there's so many variants that can happen. You lose your balance for one moment, you're thrown over the top. And that keeps us as fans on the edge of our seats. We don't know how it's going to play out. Tamina came out. They don't use her last name anymore, but that is Tamina Snuka. the daughter of the Superfly, Jimmy Snuka from back in the day.
Okay.
Had a pretty good run before being eliminated by Michelle McCool, who we'll talk about here in just a few. Chelsea Green, they made a big deal out of Chelsea Green coming back to WWE, and she was thrown out in less than 10 seconds by Rhea Ripley. It was hilarious. But it makes perfect sense. That's, Rhea Ripley is a despicable human being who would obviously target somebody like that to get rid of them as quickly as you can, especially somebody coming in fresh into the ring. It just all made sense. It was very cohesive.
I became a fan first through the Rumble, though. I have to admit.
Rhea Ripley,
Yes,
she's good. She's really good.
I mean, not just her the idea that you get when you watch her, but watching her take bumps that in a traditional match she would have just overpowered and crushed them, but she was again, we talk about in the Rumble, it's a different dynamic, and so she definitely gave and took very freely, and yeah, she earned my respect watching. I was like, man, she is getting her butt kicked. Man, she stood up and she just laid that person out.
Dude,
And
she's mommy for a reason. Look, she's making an honest man of Dominic Mysterio. That's all I know.
Whether he wants to or not.
He's reformed. That's all I can tell you. Zelina Vega won my heart when she came out wearing the Street Fighter outfit.
Yeah, I wasn't entirely sure what was going on with the Street Fighter thing, but I do know that when she did that, when she was on the back, on Ray's back and did that flip thing, I was like, oh, I'm cheering for her now. She proved she had her athleticism and was proving her spot in the Rumble, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Jury is the name of the character. And Zelina Vega actually, in a very cool spot, is going to be a commentator on the next Street Fighter game. Absolutely love that. I think that's awesome. Good on her. Love the outfit. I always like it when they have those crossovers. So it was fun to see her perform in that. It couldn't have been easy though, wearing that get up in certain parts, but she was absolutely entertaining. Raquel Rodriguez, who was the crowd favorite, I believe, well, at least at this point, to win the Rumble. Had a really good run. I really enjoyed her. I could see money in her. She's taller than a lot of the female athletes, but she can move very, very well. I just see dollar signs when I see her. She has a good look and a little bit different body structure. I think she'll be good. She was eliminated by Rhea Ripley. Mia Yim came out and didn't do a whole lot, honestly. Lacey Evans, who legitimately a former Marine, came out and she's back on SmackDown. Didn't seem the crowd was super excited about her.
The actors try to push her, making comparison between her with the Cobra Clutch and Sergeant Slaughter with her saluting. So,
which I thought was good, by the way. I'm like, well, if you're going to do it, go all in.
Yeah, so I was definitely intrigued at that. I wasn't sure if she was relatively new or if or what was going on there. So,
well, she's former NXT. She gets called up to the main roster a couple of years ago, and they have her as this pretty Southern belle. I'm like, no one calls anybody from the South a Southern belle anymore. I'm like, oh, this is not going to end well, and it didn't. So they're just trying something new with her on that. Out of nowhere, apparently they were running short on competitors and had to call people out of the crowd because Michelle McCool was number 25 and looked like she's like, oh my goodness, I have to go now, kids. Wait right here. And literally climbed to the ring with her Uggs on, which was tremendous, and had a really good performance, a really good showing. And I was happy for her. I know she had a birthday recently. I think she turned 41 or 42. You couldn't tell it. She did a really, really nice job. Former school teacher in the Duval County District of Jacksonville, for those who care. Indy Hartwell showed up from NXT, and she didn't accomplish a great deal. In fact, Sonya Deville eliminated her. And then I don't know if you were watching or listening when she waved out her mouth to her go back to NXT. That was legitimately funny, and I appreciated some of that sniping that went on. And of course, Sonya Deville has to be in the Rumble to eliminate Indy Hartwell, and she came out after Indy. Then you had my girl Shotzi Blackheart, who came out with the tank. And I was already telling my family, like, I gotta have my girl Shotzi, and they're like, "Is she good?" I'm like, "Well, she drives a tank, so yeah, she's good in my eyes." Had a
My
nice, had a
my
nice,
daughter to
yeah.
drive the thing all the way down there and fire. I was like, okay, calm yourself, calm
So
yourself.
my oldest is like, I drive the tank all the way to the ring. So you can see they're smart kids. They're like, we can
That's a
kill.
long walk too, and
I
the
know.
next one, Nikki, what I don't remember her last name.
Oh, Nikki Cross.
Yeah, she ran
She was
like
Ultimate Warrior in that sucker.
you literally see her, and she's got this look on her face like she's going to murder you. And I'm like, man, nope, nope, nope. I mean, and she ran the entire. And this isn't just like the normal like Monday Night Raw where you run down and 10 seconds later you're in the ring. It's
Right.
like a 5 second run, and I'm like, dear God, the whole time she had this like I'm going to murder somebody look on her face. I'm like, nope, I'm
Well,
good.
well, remember, not only do you throw in that straight line, now all of a sudden you take a sharp left. It's like,
I
oh my
know.
goodness, who designed this? What engineer did this?
And then she gets in there and she hits everybody. I mean, just like whack, 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 whack.
Well, look, if you're gonna hurt somebody, just go all out. Don't
Yeah,
pick
but
and
then
choose.
she guillotines herself. Did you see? I mean, she throws herself. I'm like, she just guillotined herself.
I,
Where's somebody for the 619?
it happens to the best of us. Liv Morgan eliminated her there at the very end. And then
Yeah,
came number 30. And we've been talking on the couch, whatever happened to so and so, whatever happened to so and so, whatever happened to so and so. One of the ones brought up was Nia Jax. I'm like, yeah, she never showed up after WWE released her about a year ago. And sure enough, number 30 hit, and it was Nia Jax. And I'm like, wow, they're gonna bring her back and really push her strong. No, they're not. She was eliminated by like 11 ladies, all ganged
everybody
up.
in the ring was like, that, as she was walking that long turn, everybody in the ring stopped and was watching as she approaches.
Mm-hmm.
Even crazy chick who just ran down there was still guillotined off the ropes, and they're literally nobody else in the ring is fighting during this. They're just watching her approach.
Well, now listen, just because you're crazy don't mean you're dumb. I mean,
Well,
you can be crazy and smart. There is crazy like a fox.
but I mean, but nobody's fighting. They're just watching, and she gets into the ring,
Mhm.
and everybody's still just they're just. And I was like, that's definitely amusing. Then the first chick comes up, and it's over.
Yep. And then you get down to the final two, which are Liv Morgan and
Well,
Rhea Ripley. Oh, well,
you have
no, actually get the final three. Excuse me. Go
because
ahead.
you wouldn't have the ending that you had without the final three.
That's true. You have Asuka, Liv Morgan, and you have Rhea Ripley, and they're all on the apron
Mm-hmm.
fighting. And Asuka goes to pull a Muda and blow the mist, or a Kabuki if you're an old school wrestling fan like we are, or
Yeah.
even a Kendo Nagasaki, more championship wrestling from Florida stuff, more from my era in childhood. Anyway, blows the mist and misses Rhea Ripley, nails Liv Morgan in the eyes, blinding her. Rhea Ripley is able to eliminate Asuka,
Yep.
and then you're down to Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley. And Earl, they did a great job of making you believe that just for a moment, Liv Morgan had a chance.
Yeah. Well, you know, as Rhea was dangling, holding on to the ropes, I was like, she's been in this thing for like 45 minutes.
Mhm.
I'm tired watching this. I'm not even doing it. I'm like, that would not be fake where I'm barely hanging on if it was me. I'm like 45 minutes of running around, getting shot, getting suplex, getting clothesline, all this stuff. And I'm like, that would be legitimate. And so she comes, she's hanging on, and the other wrestler, blind, makes her way to her to get her,
Right.
and Rhea flips her legs up, manages to get her in a headlock, and throws her down on what I have to say was a really hard bump she took. I mean,
Oh, it was mic'd well. I'm like, that sounded like, and it probably did hurt.
oh
You,
yeah, I mean, it was a solid bump, and but yeah, I enjoyed it. I would have to say that initially I was like, oh man, the women's ring, what is this going to be? 15 seconds, and next one to come up. But these ladies were serious athletes, and they took the bumps and they put in the work, and they have to give it as much props as the men's rumble.
Oh,
And
absolutely. And there were times in wrestling that the women were portrayed more for eye candy. I mean, let's call it what it is. The early 2000s, especially, they hired a lot of catalog models who weren't really wrestlers.
no,
This is not that. These are not just women who are beautiful. These are women that can fight, and they do their craft very well. And it's not punch kick.
no,
It's much more nuanced than that. You have a Shayna Baszler who's an MMA fighter, Sonya Deville who is wired that way as well. Plus, you have your traditional wrestlers, your indie wrestlers who are trying to learn the WWE style when they're brought in. I think it worked. I think it clicked. I think both Rumbles were both really, really good. And the last thing I want to give you, Earl, 1 hour and 2 minutes and change. That is how long Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley went in the Rumble. So both Rumbles went well over an hour.
yeah,
And the two ladies actually will have, I believe, have broken the record for the women's Rumble as well, going an hour and 2 minutes, which basically ties Rey Mysterio for his time in the Rumble, which that record got broken tonight by Gunther and Cody Rhodes. So as far as I'm concerned, at this point, a really good show. And then there's one match left. I'm going to hand it off to you, and you kind of walk us through the match.
that was it. That was 11ish, right?
Well, it was 11-ish, but there was more. Act now.
It was 11:28, I think, when the women's match was done, and
I
the
believe.
final match was running through the scenario. So again, I'm still a relative newbie here. So I'm like, Roman Reigns, he's related to Dwayne Johnson. He's one of the Beach Boys,
Yep.
not the music group, mind you. And so he leads a group uh, called the Island something.
The Bloodline.
The Bloodline. Thank you, thank you.
Mhm.
And so you have some that's what Rikishi has. It's not Rikishi's kids. It's,
Yeah. So you have Jimmy and Jey Uso, who are the unified tag champions and the sons of Rikishi. And then you have Solo Sakai, who is the son of Tama. He was the Tonga Kid, and I believe he was a Samoan Savage in the SST in the early days or late NWA, early WCW, but in that family grouping
okay.
as well.
So obviously, wrestlers I was not familiar with, but their bloodline. See what I did there?
You're a smart one, aren't you?
It was kind of built in though, so I don't get full credit for it. But so I was familiar with their bloodline, hence the name Bloodline. And so you have Roman Reigns as the leader, the chieftain, the tribal boss, the kingpin, whatever you want to call him. And you have Paul Heyman, who is, I guess, their manager ish.
Advocate. I don't know. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, whatever. He's affiliated with them. And then you have another man named Sammy, who looked like he would be the reject of Sheamus, his bloodline.
Well,
I mean, they share the same ruddy hair and pale complexion. And so from the lead up to it, you find out that there's another character named Kevin Owens who's fighting with Roman Reigns, the Bloodline, and then you have this other wrestler named Sammy who is more like a little brother to Sheamus, kind of look to him, who's trying to prove himself for the Bloodline. But because he is not of their blood, there is some hesitancy and questions. Plus, you have to understand the Bloodline are heels, despite their popularity, they're still the bad guys. So, leading into it, this is Roman Reigns for the both heavyweight champions. He owns both of them. The Universe champion or whatever, however they put it, versus Kevin Owens, and Sammy and Paul Heyman are there ringside, and Sammy's there to prove himself once and for all that he is one of the bloodline and adopted into it. Blah blah blah. So, hence the beginning of the match. Is there anything that I missed that you would want to throw out there?
no, I think that's good. I want to correct something I said that was mistaken. I was thinking something else. Solo Sakai is Rikishi's son. I was thinking of Jacob Fatu, who is in MLW on independent circuit. He is the
one you were
Tonga Kid son. Yeah, sorry about getting that confused. They're all family. But yeah, Solo Sakai, the third member of the bloodline, is Rikishi's son as well. So I just wanted to correct that.
So heading into this match, I was expecting something short because it was already over, well over the 3 hour mark, and I was expecting just something quick and easy and just wrap it up. And obviously, the match was a good bit longer than that, but it was very tense. You could see the athleticism the two guys had. They had a very good chemistry, very physical, and they did play to the crowd a lot. And despite uh, Kevin Owens being the baby face, the face, the good guy. His opponent Roman Reigns did have several moments that the crowd jumped behind him, like when he raised his hand fist with, I guess, a Superman punch.
Yes,
They were very. I mean, you saw all these fists raised that had red gloves on, and the crowd. I mean, they were. Roman Reigns was. He's very. The audience was behind him, and he knew how to work the audience well. And I think that was portrayed both as him getting ready to do some of his moves that the crowd popped for, but also in some of the heel aspects that he did was able to work the crowd, and that is something that very few people are able to do, be both heel and face simultaneously. And so I think that proved his popularity is founded for good reason during that. So go ahead, take it from there, Mr. Seamus.
So it did go longer than I anticipated. I expected about a 10 or 15-minute match. Oh no, we got much more than that. Ultimately, there was a ref bump, which I expected would take place where the referee was knocked down. A chair was brought into the ring to potentially finish off Kevin Owens. But Owens intercepted Roman Reigns before he was able to use it, hit a stunner, but there's no referee to make the count. This went on for several minutes. Finally, Owens hit another stunner on it because he hit several tonight on Roman Reigns. The referee rolled back in by that point, 1-2 kick out. Roman Reigns hit the Superman punch, 1-2 kick out. Roman Reigns with a spear, 1-2 kick out. He would actually hit him with that again, that combo again. He would kick out. And then finally, after absolutely brutalizing Kevin Owens on the outside of the ring, including a spear through the barrier, which was a nasty shot, and then slamming Owens at the back of Owens' head on the ring set.
Twice.
Not once, but twice. A really brutal encounter. It really, there's an old saying, there's an old wrestler, long before we were born, but I've seen his stuff, named Johnny Valentine. Okay. He used to say, they don't have to believe wrestling is real, they just have to believe I'm real. And that makes a whole lot of sense. And they portrayed it like it was a serious issue. And to quote another older wrestler, personal issues draw money. And it was a good match to close the show. It was a longer show, but you know what? It was a big event. This is one of their big four, or as it used to be. And ultimately, KO cannot kick out about the third time of getting that. And Roman Reigns wins. Even though on the outside the entire time the camera picks up Sami Zayn living and dying by every 2 count. You're not really sure what he's going to do. You kind of think like he might be loyal to his friend, Kevin Owens, who they broke into business together and they've been friends and frenemies. But ultimately, the friendship's there. But he didn't make a move to help. And at the end of the match, they continued to pummel Kevin Owens pretty severely to the point that they handcuffed him to the ring, to the ropes, and started kicking him. They'd already hit 3D on him, which is one of the moves the Usos are using. Shout out to the Dudley Boys for that one. I'll testify, my brother. By the way, Devon Dudley was released from WWE in the last 2 weeks. Just random fact there. They handcuff him. They beat on him. They go to use a chair. Sami Zayn stops him. They say, Roman Reigns says to him, you use the chair. And he won't do it. And eventually Roman he starts, paintbrushing him, shoving him in the face. And finally he steps in front of Owens with his back to Sami Zayn. And Sami Zayn clocks him in the back with the chair.
He uses it.
Just enough to tick him off.
Yep.
And so the bloodline attack, Solo Sakai attacks.
Not all.
I was going to get to that. You're right, except for one, and that would be Jey Uso, he's the one who had issues with him first, and was like, "You're not one of us." But then grew to be like, "No, he's taking more hits for us than anybody. He's one of us." And you'll notice he kind of slinked to the turnbuckle, didn't do anything. He's getting beat on. He didn't step up and do anything, but he was so disgusted. He just kind of slinked out of the ring and walked up the aisleway. And they beat on Zayn and Owens a little bit more, and actually uncomfortably long that segment, because I'm like, is there literally no one in the back who cares? I mean, run out with a chair and clear the ring. That's always cracked me about wrestling. Like, you just had 30 people compete in the men's rumble, so there's at least 30 people in the locker room.
No, 29 of them got mad and went home early. Okay.
Baron Corbin's still hurting after the beating he took, but it always cracks me up that no one does it. But I understand it advances the storyline. There is no conclusion. Earl, what were you saying you think comes out of this angle tonight? What do you see taking place?
Well, from watching it, I was half expecting maybe Cody Rhodes to run down, since he is slated to be facing Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. And I thought that maybe you'd have a Sami and KO and Cody versus Roman Reigns and two of the Rikishi sons, because one of them did not want to take part of the attack with Sami.
Right.
Maybe he felt you don't know. So I thought maybe something like that would happen. Now, I can honestly say, as I was watching the match and the pre-match and the match and the after-match, it really felt like I was watching something I've seen before. You have one man who has a nation behind him, and he's ruling with an ironclad fist. And you've got tag team champions, and you've got intercontinental champions. You've got all these different champions who are, part of this nation, and led by one tribal leader, if you want to go that way. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have one who's a lone wolf, so to speak, and he's irreverent, and he's not afraid to go off on you, and he loves to stun people. So for me, I was like, man, this was a callback to the Attitude Era, where you once saw The Rock in the Nation of Domination, and then over here you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was around sucking people off and breaking them out with the stunners. And I'm like, man, history repeats itself, But
what is old is new again.
Yeah, but it was a different. It's not. I'm not going to take away anything from the bloodline or the wrestlers or Kevin Owens. It's just the similarities that I've seen that it reminded me of, but they are very much their own individuals, because at that time, The Rock, at that point in time in his career, The Rock was not capable of being what Roman Reigns is right now as the leader of the bloodline. And when you watch the Nation of Domination back then, you had Fruit and a few others before they were no longer part of the group, but you saw this group, but it was all about The Rock.
Right.
But here, I'm like, you see there's definite personalities, and there's chemistry, and there's people that you care for that are in this bloodline group or trying to get into the bloodline. So props to them for being a deeper variant than what it could have been. So, I as my first pay-per-view back in almost 2 decades, I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was.
Cool. No, I appreciate your thoughts on that. And I just had one more thing I wanted to talk about. The announcers. Now, Michael Cole's been the voice of WWE for what, 20 something years now? I mean, he goes back to like 98, 97, 98. Between him and Corey Graves, who, I have had irritating relationships with through the years. They brought back Pat McAfee at the very beginning of the show, former SmackDown color commentator. Now he's on ESPN College Game Day. He's the hottest sports talk show host in the country. Has a huge following, especially amongst young people. Bringing him back and listening to his commentary, it added quite a bit, I felt like, to the show. I thought they were on their game tonight. Their comments were not just insightful, but pretty flippin' funny. When you have Corey Graves asking Pat McAfee, has Lee Corso ever thrown a set of stares at him. He's like, no, but I thought he would. Or Pat McAfee referencing when the women at the end of the women's match, like, I really thought this was going to be Georgia TCU 65-7, which was the final score in the national title game for college football this year. I mean, all that stuff just kind of worked together. There were a few inside baseball references. For example, apparently Michael Cole likes to throw some back per Pat McAfee's comments. And then there were a couple that leaned a little blue. But you know, you can filter that out as you want. But I really thought the commentary was on point tonight. Overall, I'm going to give the show a solid A because I was entertained. Yeah. I enjoyed it, and it makes me want to come back for another pay-per-view. And honestly, for a Saturday night at home with the family, can you ask for more than that?
I don't think so.
All right. Good.
Well, I was going to say, for those out there, our fans, you should hit us up and leave comments because there is another pay-per-view that is next weekend.
That's the NXT one.
Exactly. I saw it and I was like, well, if people are interested and they hit that like button and subscribe and leave a comment, let us know, do you want us to cover it or not?
You know what? I can be free next Saturday night. It is the joy of being older and not going out and doing anything because we have kids and have no life. So we can absolutely do that. So you hit us up, let us know. This is our first Combat1 Wrestling Podcast. We look forward to doing a whole lot more of them under the Midnight Magic Musings channel. And we may have some other shows debuting in the next month or two as well. We're still finalizing some of those details. But overall, Earl, give it a grade for me.
I think I have to give it an A-.
Okay.
Because I think it succeeded in making me be interested once again, and the pace was very good. The bumps, the athleticism, the characterization. There's no slow moments. It didn't drag, and it kept my kids the three older ones sat here and watched it with me, and that is no little feat considering the fact that they're aged from 17 to 12, and two girls and one boy. They managed to sit here and watch over 3-hour pay-per-view sport event. Definitely giving you an A.
Well, my oldest watched it till the Roman Reigns match. Lady Cephas watched it all the way till the end, right before we started recording. She relocated here, so that's usually a tell that if people are interested in other than just us, there's probably something good going on with it. But that's all I have. Do you have anything else? We will bring the podcast to a close.
Nope. This was a pleasure as always, Lord Cephas.
You know what, Earl? It is always a pleasure to hang out and talk. Whatever it is on our mind, and we record under the banner of the Midnight Magic Musings channel. This is certainly a Midnight Magic Musings. It's actually even later than that since the Rumble didn't get over until almost 12:30 this morning, on Sunday morning, as we record this podcast. But Earl, had a great time watching. I had a great time chatting with you, and I've had a great time recording with this. I look forward to the very next one. You will definitely see more of our Combat1 Wrestling Podcast as we go through. Maybe covering shows. Maybe we'll do some coverage of some stories or things. If things pop, we'll certainly do that. But like I said, hit us up and we'll take a look at possibly doing next week. We know we have a pay-per-view in February, depending on our schedules. That would be the Elimination Chamber, which is always interesting because they have the cage on top of the cage. So that's always that structure is just evil and it's wicked cool to see. But for the Earl of Florida, I am your humble host and servant, Lord Cephas. I appreciate everyone who listens, subscribe, leave a comment. It absolutely helps us in the YouTube algorithm. For the Earl, I'm the Lord. Have a great evening. Have a great day whenever you're listening, whenever you're watching. You take care, and we'll see you next time.
Catch you on the flip side, guys.